welcome to the Minister and to the EU representative and to all of you. Now, our report looks at the situation of women in policing in India, Bangladesh, the Maldives, and Pakistan. What we really wanted to do was to document the experiences and challenges that women police are facing across states. We can't call it, an academic, rigorous study, but we certainly did everything that we could to ensure that the experiences of women police across ranks, from the lowest to the highest, was represented as best as possible. Our aim through the report is to advocate strongly for the inclusion of women in the police. Now, as I said, CHRI, just to give you a sense of how we did it, CHRI did the fieldwork in India, Bangladesh, and the Maldives, and we had our partner in Pakistan who used information which they'd already compiled and did some fresh fieldwork in 2013. Now, besides primary research and documentary research, we also conducted surveys and focus group discussions with women at the ranks of constable, the lower ranks, women at the ranks of constable, assistant sub-inspectors, sub-inspectors, so from the low to the subordinate level. And we conducted direct interviews with senior women, wherever we could. We also spoke to male police, but our focus was really on speaking to women. Now, all of this required us to get permission from police departments, which was quite a task. So we went where we could, where we got the permission. So the Bangladesh police, and in Bangladesh, we were able to conduct interviews and surveys in 3 police ranges: Dhaka, Chittagong, and Sylhet. In India, we went to 5 states: Kerala, Jharkhand, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Meghalaya. We couldn't do it statewide. We were given access to select districts and select police stations, some of them all women police stations where they exist. In the Maldives, we were able to conduct interviews and focus group discussions in the capital city of Malé and 2 other islands. And in Pakistan, we used our partners' pretty much countrywide research. Now, before we start, there are many differences between the police in all of these countries. Bangladesh and Maldives have centralized, unitary police organizations. India and Pakistan, of course, are split between state forces and central forces. Our report only looks at the civil police in states. And Maldives is the youngest police organization in South Asia. It was created only in 2004. Before that, there was a national security service. So there's lots of difference between Maldives and the rest. One thing that we were not able to do was we did not look at any of the central police organizations in either India or Pakistan. We were not able to access armed police women battalions in any states, and particularly conflict states. So there's a lot of rich material which would come out of, say, Kashmir or maybe some of the northeast states, but we weren't able to. I think that's something that maybe we can, in the coming years, move towards. So the regional average across South Asia is 5% when you total all of the national averages. India currently is at 6.11%, Bangladesh at 4.63%, Pakistan at less than 1% at 0.94%, and Maldives with the highest representation of women at 7.4%. But of course, Maldives is also a minuscule police compared to the numbers in the other countries, so that also should be taken into consideration. India and Pakistan, of course, India has a fair amount of variation across states. Pakistan a little bit less so because the numbers themselves are so minimal, but that also should be seen. So at present in India, the highest representation is at 14% and the lowest is at less than 1% at 0.93. So that is the level of variance. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the main barriers which we encountered through our talking to women police. I won't be able to go too much into our recommendations because they're quite country-specific and very, very lengthy. Disadvantage to women starts here already. For instance, in India, we still have, there are very, very few states where there's separate, very, very few states where there is a common cadre for entry for men and women. Most states still retain separate cadres for men and women at entry points, which means that usually a significantly less number of posts are sanctioned for women to even enter and be recruited into the police. So you're already starting at a lesser, the numbers are already reduced that way. In Bangladesh, there is a mid-level entry point, the sergeant rank, from which women to today are barred from entering. Some states in India, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, to name a few, have now have adopted a common cadre, and it seems to be working well. The Bureau of Police Research and Development's Model Police Manual also puts down that a common cadre should be in place, which again, at a policy level, is a very positive initiative. Now, in terms of quotas, I think we could write a separate report just on quotas and, their significance, whether they're helping, whether they're not. But essentially, Pakistan and Bangladesh have set a 10% quota for employment of the police in government, across government, including police departments. Maldives has no quota set. In India, we have an advisory issued by the Center for 33% reservation. And from what we could find through our research, because there is not one place where this information is compiled, at least 12 states in India have adopted reservation policies at 30% or more. At least 4 of those states have had those policies for at least 10 years. And still, our highest one of the states is Maharashtra, which has had it since the 70s, in fact, and we're still just about pushing 10% representation there. Though there has been quite a big jump in Maharashtra over the last few years, so clearly efforts are being made. In Pakistan, women who apply through the quota are then barred from applying through the general category, which means that, entry on merit is then a little bit declined for them. Everywhere that we went, women police across ranks told us one of the things which is a huge deterrent for us and discouraging for us is that you don't see a woman on the recruitment boards, interview boards, selection panels, and that is something which should be mainstream throughout as much as possible. Now, in terms of deployment and allocation of duties, everywhere we went, we found that women are assigned desk and clerical jobs. They're not being mainstreamed into frontline operational duties. In the Maldives at present, women are hardly even in police stations. 60% of police stations in the Maldives do not have a single woman officer serving in the police station. Everywhere we went, and this is, I think, a global problem, women are concentrated in the lower ranks. Pakistan last year, for the first time, appointed a woman as the station house officer of the Clifton police station in Karachi. There is only one woman heading a district in Bangladesh at present. We do have the exact figures for India through the BPRD's data, but we haven't sort of crunched it. But again, in India, we found very few female station house officers or females heading districts. Another thing that we found across the board is that women are being segregated into specific women and children tasks and duties. Now, there's a real conundrum because, in all of the countries, there are legal obligations where, especially on complaints of rape, complaints of child sexual abuse, women have been given legal duties, women police, to take statements of victims, to register complaints, to accompany investigating officers for investigation. So the legal obligation does mean that you must have women. But it also means that you're isolating women into some of these, into one category of crime investigation. Everywhere we went, male colleagues constantly said that women are not equipped to do crime investigation. So this is truly a structural problem. Bias has a lot to do with it. It affects the career and progression of women later on. So it is something which, it's an immense problem, but it has to be dealt with. In terms of sexual harassment at the workplace, I think we should all be proud that in South Asia there are at least regulations and laws in place across the 4 countries. India and Pakistan have passed specific preventive legislation. Pakistan passed its Protection Against Harassment of Women at the Workplace Act in 2010. India passed the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act 2013. In Bangladesh, the High Court has issued guidelines which are binding on all government departments, and the Maldives has an internal police order which is in place. So what this means is that sexual harassment is defined. We know what it constitutes. It is clearly laid down. Remedies, complaints mechanisms have been established through these various laws and regulations. The Maldives is the only one in which the Internal Professional Standards Command of the police is the one which has to adjudicate the sexual harassment complaints. Everywhere else, external committees, committees have to be set up with also independent external representatives on them, mainly headed by women. Now, we found that there was relatively little acknowledgement of sexual harassment by police leadership and even by senior women police across the countries. There's hardly any effort to measure or study the extent of sexual harassment, who it is affecting, at what level. Are remedies in place? Has everything been constituted as it should? There was a lot of patchy information. People were not sure. Most women did not know about the existence. If they knew about the existence of a law, they did not know what had to be instituted under it. So there's a lot of work to be done by police leadership, especially, to right this. Everywhere, again, where we went, women were hesitant to complain due to fear of victimization. Now, this will be true in almost all workplaces, but it is true in the police. And there was a real fear that, I will be maligned, I will be punished, I will be victimized. And we found that there were many occasions where they would not speak, especially at the constable and SI levels. They wouldn't speak to us when we were doing formally the survey. They wouldn't be very open. But in breaks, they would come and say, actually, it really is really very endemic. So again, just not being able to speak about it is a concern. There's a tremendous lack of victim support. Again, little awareness of complaints mechanisms, who to complain to, how you can complain, and processes among junior ranks in particular. Here, Bangladesh is is a little bit ahead because there is a police women's network which has been established, and they've set up a helpline. So women police can anonymously call this helpline and get help, which is a police women's initiative. So they can complain about anything, including sexual harassment, and then they'll be given some help in taking their complaint forward. So that is, it's an informal mechanism, but it is something. But one thing also is that in the Maldives, there was a considerable amount of openness in terms of talking about sexual harassment. So it doesn't mean that this order that's in place is not being implemented properly, but there was, most women were very, very open about the comments and actions which often are passed by male colleagues. Okay, now in terms of promotions, again, so we've got women concentrated in lower ranks, which means that they are not present in senior ranks. Some glass ceilings are in place just by practice. In Pakistan, certain police organizations actually bar the growth of women after a particular rank. So women can't actually progress beyond usually mid-level ranks. In India, again, because of the separate promotional avenues in most states, the restriction, again, then a lesser number of posts will be opened for women when the time for promotion comes. So for a man to reach inspector rank, even though it'll take him years and years, it'll take a woman even longer. Also, what happens many times is that women are unable to fulfill the promotion criteria. Now, everything is linked. So this goes back to the duties that you are being allocated, the years that you have been in service, the kind of experience that you're able to show as a police officer. If you're not getting any solid investigative experience as an SI, you're going to come down in the promotion compared to a male colleague. So, it truly is affecting very much what's happening to women. Truly, the biggest problem is just the absolute bias against women. And what this really goes to the heart of the fact that police departments have not been able to root out the larger societal bias within their own organizations. And we certainly don't want a casteist, racist, patriarchal police. But we've got a long way to go before we get there. Everywhere we went, we were told that policing is a man's job. Women cannot do it. They just can't. Biologically, physically, everything. They have babies, they have to go away, they constantly have to deal with their families. So, it was like sticks to beat them with, which are just these are just the natural responsibilities of women. The virtual invisibility of women in the police is again something which is affecting how they are perceived. Perceptions aren't changing. Now, we found that there really is a lot of stress and effect on women because of this, because it's constant. And there was a variation of the ways in which women were being affected. Some were absolutely internalizing the negative perception and feeling that, yes, women cannot do policing the way men can. So we just have to, ride out our career, do the best we can, and that's it. Some felt that we have to actually become cheap imitations of men ourselves, and that's the only way. And others were just, in a constant state of frustration that I'm constantly having to doubly prove myself. If I ask for leave, 5 questions are asked. If he asks for leave, it's okay. So again, that this is one of those things where it's not very tangible. You must speak to women to get a sense of what is happening. So this is I hope that our report is a small beginning towards that, but it is something which we have to face. On all women police stations, it's interesting, there's a lot of difference between across the region. All women police stations are precisely what the name says. They are police stations to register and investigate crimes against women, sometimes demarcated, sometimes across the board. For women only. They are established only in India and Pakistan. In Bangladesh and Maldives, at the policy level, deliberately they did not adopt the all-women police stations. Most women police are not in favor, at least the ones that we spoke to, are not in favor of all women police stations and feel that it's a better use of resources and better for them to be mainstreamed into police stations rather than be siloed and isolated into all women police stations. Many times, all women police stations can't even investigate the complaints. The complaint is registered at the all-women police station and then forwarded to the original station in the jurisdiction where an investigating officer then can take the investigation forward. So it almost becomes like a post box. There's a lot certainly in India, there's a lot of churning about this. The center has intervened to an extent. The BPRD, I think, has ordered an audit of all women police stations and how they are functioning. So it is something which, as policy, we must be looking at. But I just want to leave you with the fact that most women police are not in favor of this. in both Bangladesh and Pakistan, gender policies, comprehensive gender policies have been drafted for police departments. They've been initiated by not a government source, but done in partnership with government. So in Pakistan, a German funder, GIZ, with the National Police Bureau, which is like our Bureau of Police Research and Development, did the drafting. And in Bangladesh, it was done by the UNDP's Police Reform Program, which works very closely with the Bangladesh police. Neither of them is implemented as yet, but it's there. In Bangladesh, it is being approved. They're talking about it. In Pakistan also, there is some discussion going on. But at least it's there. In India, we don't have a single composite policy framework. We've got a tremendous amount of guidance from the center through advisories, all of which are listed in our report. But there is not a single comprehensive piece of a policy framework which lays down conditions, recruitment, plans, targets for the police. Bangladesh and Pakistan both have formal organized women police networks. In Bangladesh, it's gone quite far. It holds meetings, it holds workshops, it's set up a helpline. In Pakistan too, they're trying. In India, we have our 2-year national level police women conference. Unfortunately, there have been reams of recommendations on how to better implement all of the very, very good recommendations which come out of these conferences, but that implementing mechanism has not been set up as yet. And just to end, I think one thing we did find is that all of these countries in a slipshod kind of way are embarking on police reform. But gender, diversity, gender equality, none of these issues are integrated into these larger police reform processes at all. And if you look at other reform initiatives in other countries, you will find that that integration also helps in terms of actually mainstreaming women and equality for better policing. Thank you.